We all remember when this one used to be a huge one. The winner owned the ACC. Will it happen again? Well, let's buckle up for a good one. Hopefully on Saturday night. ABC sure hopes so. In Tallahassee, it's Florida State hosting Clemson. This is our Seminoles live show that we present to you every Wednesday night, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, courtesy. Got Jason Parker, NBC6, and a special guest tonight to talk some Clemson football. Of course, Jason Priester, allclemson.com on SI. Boys, how we doing tonight?
Living the dream. Jason, how you doing up there in the big SC?
I'm hanging in there, man. Hanging in there.
I'd like to point out that Mark Rogers likes to bring on a occasional guest after a Florida State loss to kind of wallow in our misery and our pain. So, he'll be here for this first part real quick.
Jason Priester, Jason here tries to do anything to stir up the crowd against me. That's kind of his thing.
Stirring that pot, huh?
Stir up Miami fans, and he likes to stir up anybody to let them know, hey, Mark didn't pick Florida State. Mark didn't. Okay.
Then start picking us more.
We all know better.
Yeah.
Okay. A quick take on North Carolina State, because Jason Priester, am I going to have to do this for the next 20 minutes? Jason in the middle, the Clemson Jason, is going to have to leave us about 20, 25 after. So we want to get his take on Clemson. Then we'll do the reverse, and we will talk last week's game a little bit later. So my quick take on North Carolina State, I posted a video, Jason and Jason, on the Mike Norvell decision late in the game that I partially agreed with. I partially did not agree with. We'll get into that a little bit later, but it was disappointing, obviously, with a 17-3 lead on the road that the Noles could not hang on.
Yeah, real quick before we talk about the Clemson game, I understand the reason for the decision. I get that you don't have the most reliable kicking game in the world right now at this point. Mind you, Ryan Fitzgerald did hit a long field goal to end the first half and make it 17-3. The analogy I'm going to use real quick is sometimes Kmart lingerie works the same as Victoria's Secret. And by Kmart lingerie, I mean run the ball up the middle and go for the field goal. There's no shit. Guess what? If we lose the game on a missed field goal, shocker, it won't be the first time in Florida State history. I can think of 6 off the top of my head I've been to against Miami. So I don't mind if we lose the game on a missed field goal. I mind losing the game on a pass play that literally, when Jordan Travis dropped back, the exact words I said were 3 words, what the bleep. That's literally what I said out loud inside my station going, what the bleep. So right now, Florida State is at the point where you're 4-2 on the season, and we talked about this. We're 4-2 in the season. If we lose to Clemson this week, we're 4-3, still at a winning record. We're still at where we can possibly reach our goals this season. So that's where we got to come out. The question is going to be, this game is going to be a barometer of where is Florida State right now. Is Florida State ready to play with the big boys? Because they've been competitive with Wake, been competitive with NC State. Can they be competitive with a Clemson team that now, as I turn it over to the other JP in the room, our special guest, South Carolina Jason, we'll call him. I'm not going to say Clemson is officially back to being playoff Clemson, officially back to being national title contender Clemson, but they're looking like they're pretty much on that path. What is the mindset right now amongst Tiger Nation with this start to the season?
I think you pretty much nailed it. This team is still looking to put together 4 quarters of complimentary football. Both sides. They've yet to do that. Either the offense is playing at a high level and the defense has been a little off, or the defense is playing at a high level and the offense is playing a little off. Kind of like Boston College last week, where it seemed like the offense was just going through the motions a little bit in the first half, and after some early issues, defense settled in and really held Boston College's offense in check. I think Clemson's right there. They're not quite there yet. Again, they need to put together 4 quarters of complimentary football where both sides of the ball are playing at a high level. We just haven't seen it yet.
It's interesting because you watch the last 3 games Clemson's played, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but you have the double overtime against Wake, where it looked like, all right, defense playing a little sloppy against Wake. And then you talk about it a little bit. That second half against NC State, Clemson played some great lights-out football. Then you got that second half against Boston College, Clemson played some great lights-out football. But I want to focus on the offense for a moment because there's one man under center, DJU. We've talked about him for several years now. He was much maligned last season. This season, we talk about he's lost a little bit of weight. He still looks like he's having a few moments of inconsistency in the first half, but he is looking like he's getting better. What are your thoughts on DJU so far through the first 6 games of the season?
I think he's night and day different compared to last year. Number one, he's healthy. I don't think he was healthy at any point last season after the opening game against Georgia. I mean, he suffered a sprained PCL against Louisville, tore a tendon in one of the fingers on his throwing hand later in the season. He ended up having to have surgery on that knee, if I'm not mistaken. But he played banged up all last season, and he did not play well. Make no mistake. I think it really kind of sucked the confidence out of him, to be quite honest. And through the first half of the opener this year, it looks like you're going to see the same DJ from last year. He starts putting it together a little bit in the second half. His accuracy's there. And he's gotten a little better with each week. Outside of the first half against Boston College last week, I think DJ's played really well. He's putting the ball on the money for the most part. Receivers are struggling with some drops at times, but he's even become a little bit of a factor in the running game. He's not going to rush for 70, 80, 90 yards week in and week out. But Clemson needs him to at least be that threat of, to present a threat of running the ball. They need teams to at least respect it. And I think over the past 2 or 3 weeks, he is making teams respect his ability to run the ball.
It does also help when you have a running back named Will Shipley in the backfield doing his thing. We saw what he did last year against Florida State. How is it basically you talk about how DJ with the running game, when you have Shipley back there, how much do you think that helps take the pressure off DJ, and what will Florida State see from Will Shipley this week and from the Clemson running game as a whole?
It takes a lot of pressure off DJ. It absolutely does. He doesn't have to be relied upon in the running game. Clemson's got a couple of running backs. They've actually got 3. One is hurt right now, but Will Shipley and Phil Maffa, who are absolutely capable of carrying the load. So he doesn't have to be that guy. But I've been a little bit disappointed in Clemson's running game this year. I was expecting it to be a little further ahead than where it is right now. And that might have been – I might have had too high of expectations considering the revamped offensive line. But I think that group up front is really starting to come together now. You got a freshman starting at left tackle. They moved the left tackle inside at right tackle. They moved the right tackle inside the right guard, and they moved the left guard to center. He never played center before this season. So a different look at offensive line this season. I think it took a little bit for those guys to, gel, find some continuity there. I think the freshman's really starting to round into form. Thought he played his best game last week. So hoping we'll see that Clemson running game, find a rhythm this weekend. I thought they should have been able to run it better against Boston College. I thought they'd run it better than they did against Wake Forest. I could say the same thing about most every game this year so far. It's been the biggest disappointment in offense so far is that Clemson has not been able to run the ball as well as most expected them to be able to run it. It's not been bad. It's been serviceable. It's just not been what I thought it would be.
My man, your running game doesn't have to do all that much when your defense holds Boston College to 3 points. Obviously, with all due respect to the Eagles, that was a step down in competition after 2 straight ranked wins over Wake Forest and NC State. But seeing what that defense did, holding Boston College to 3 points, how much of a boost was that for a defense that got much maligned last season, much maligned at the start of this season, heading into what I would argue is probably your toughest road environment so far of the 2022 season?
Oh, yeah. I thought Clemson's defense got humbled a little bit a couple of weeks ago against Wake Forest, especially on the back end. But being honest, the whole defense, to be honest, there were several times they had hands on Sam Hartman and he got away from him. It was just not a very good performance on the defensive side of the ball. Thought they were much better against North Carolina State, particularly in the second half. And they were downright dominant last week. Just getting Xavier Thomas back is going to be a big boost. He only played 6 snaps last week, had 2 sacks, another hurry. I mean, expect to see a lot of him this week. But I think that defense, under a new defensive coordinator, it took a couple of games to find their footing, and I think they found it. And, I think it's business as usual on the defensive side of the ball now.
Looking at your schedule, it don't get easier much for the Tigers the way the rest of the season goes. You got that game against Syracuse, who who the hell saw Syracuse being an unbeaten team at this rate and ranked 15th in the country at the midway point of the season? But you got Syracuse, then you got the bye week, then you go to Notre Dame, Louisville comes to Clemson, Miami comes to Clemson. Please beat them. I'm begging you. I am begging you 100%. Wipe them off the map. And then you end the season with the game home against South Carolina. So is there any concern, and let's say right now Clemson's in the driver's seat in the ACC, with Florida State having 2 losses. Even if Clemson were to be upset in this game, they would still be in first place in the Atlantic Division. Is there any concern of a letdown in this game, knowing what is ahead over the remaining 5 games of the season?
No, I had a little bit of concern about a letdown for Boston College. I don't have any concern about a letdown for Florida State. Clemson will be up for Florida State. It's Clemson, Florida State. I mean, it might not be what it was 10 years ago, but it's still Clemson, Florida State. Dabo Swinney won't have any problem getting those guys up for this game. I have zero doubts about that. It's on the road. Probably the most raucous road environment they'll face all year outside of maybe Notre Dame. I've never been there, so I can't comment on how raucous it gets there. But I've been to Doak Campbell when it's full. I know what kind of environment that is. And Clemson's had a reputation in past years of they like to consider themselves road warriors. They get up for those types of games. So I wouldn't expect any type of letdown this week.
How does Dabo come into this game? Because the last time, obviously the 2020 game got canceled during the COVID season. And in the 2018 game, you pretty much curb stomped us. It was a close game. I think it was closer than the 59-10 score indicated. I'm totally being sarcastic. You absolutely wiped us off the earth. But how does Dabo go and say, don't focus on that blowout the last time we were here in Tallahassee. Focus on the fact that this was a Florida State team that was leading into the fourth quarter last season in Clemson. How does Dabo keep those guys in check at this rate?
I think you just turn the film on from last year and make them watch it. I know Dabo said yesterday at his presser that when he went back and watched it, he wanted to vomit, because Clemson was so bad in areas, And I remember talking to Jamie Robinson at the ACC kickoff in Charlotte, and I was asking him about the Clemson game, and he said, yeah, we're going to see him. We're going to see him this year, man. We let that one get away from us last year, a player or two here or there. We should have won that game. We're going to see him this year. But, again, I go back to this. It's Clemson, Florida State. And this team, this is not the Florida State team from 2017, 2018. This is a much improved Florida State team. All you got to do is cut on the film to see it. And these guys know that, man. They know how good this Florida State team is.
I'll give my pick later in the show, but we're going to put you on the hot seat. Yes, you're our guest. We appreciate you coming on, as always. But I'm going to need a pick right now. I think I know where you're going to go, but I want to be interested on the score. So your pick, Florida State, Clemson, Saturday night, Bobby Mountain Field. Who you got?
I hadn't even thought about a score yet, but give me Clemson tight one.
What?
27-23. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a hard 4-quarter game.
I was shocked. I thought you were going to go with the upset in Florida State, but I get it. I get it. You cover Clemson. I guess you have to go with the team you cover there.
I can't remember the last time I actually picked them to lose. Might have been LSU in the national championship game a few years ago.
You really
wasn't against Ohio State in the playoffs in 2020? Not that one?
No, I picked them to win in that one.
Nobody picks Ohio State, Mark. Calm down. You're the only person who sticks with Ohio State right now. Well, you and pretty much everyone in the Midwest and common sense fans. But yes.
I don't know. If I was an AP voter, I think I'd vote Ohio State number 1 right now.
Look, the AP today released their predictions for this week, and they picked Florida State to win. The AP said Florida State's going to win. It's the upset of the week. I think the AP's crazy, but we can get more into my pick later on in the show. I tell you what, following the betting line after it came out, it's been kind of crazy. It's been it was odd. Go ahead. No, my final question to you on this one: does that line surprise you? Because to me, seeing how close it is, and you know what, just knowing on the surface, people who've watched this series, people who watched these two teams play last year, like you and I, it doesn't surprise them as much. But from a general outside perspective, the fact that it's that close, does that not surprise you at all?
Yeah, I thought it would open a little bit higher than 7.5, honestly. But yeah, what really surprised me was the steep drop it took in a matter of a couple of hours. It was from 7.5 down to 4.5. By Monday morning, it was 3.5. I mean, to me, that's been the most surprising thing. You just don't see drops like that or should I say swings like that very often. It's almost like Vegas knows something the rest of us don't, but we shall see.
I mean, did you put 100 down on us just to cover, just to make sure?
I would not touch this game with a 10-foot pole after all that. This is a rat pick all the way.
Which game would you rather touch, this one or Alabama-Tennessee? Because I just have a strange feeling like Tennessee might pull the upset over Alabama at home this year. Tennessee's only 7.
If I had to pick one today, I would probably pick Clemson to barely cover against Florida State, just because the Bryce, the unknown surrounding Bryce Young and Alabama.
Right.
And Alabama has not been Alabama this season. They look beatable.
Which is a great segue into letting everyone know that they can get both Jason and Jason's predictions as well as mine on Patreon. Go to patreon.com, search MarkRogersTV. You get the Discord as well, of course, the 24/7, 365 chat there that Jason so much loves. You saw his face light up when I said Discord, but you get Jason's picks, you get Jason's picks, you get my picks on like 25 games. You can't go wrong. Patreon.com, MarkRogersTV. Jason, Clemson, Jason, we appreciate you stopping by, setting us up for the big game on Saturday.
Yes, sir, man. Always a pleasure talking to you guys. I'll see y'all later.
Thank you for joining us, bud.
All right, man.
Finally.
Jason, I now have a question for you.
Inferior Jason leaves the room. Go ahead.
Exactly. We know that you're a big Dabo Swinney fan. So I almost smirked a few times when you brought the name up. I know you're a big Dabo Swinney fan. And this is actually simulcasting on the Clemson channel.
Oh, goody.
Clemson fans with us. Good to see all of them. Where would you rate this series, this rivalry, on the tote board of Florida State priorities?
This season or just in general?
In general.
Definitely third. It will, and this is the thing, and Big Game James has talked about this before, and I agree with him 100%. It will never be on the level of Florida State, Florida, and Florida State, Miami. Those two, I will still argue that Florida State, Miami, even despite both teams being down right now, is the best rivalry in the last 40 seasons of college football. I think the argument could be made on that one. And I think Florida State, Florida, in that period in the 90s was arguably the best of all time, the best decade of a rivalry of all time. But if you tell most Florida State fans, hey, would you rather beat Miami, Florida, or Clemson? A very small number of them are going to say Clemson as far as the group. But I think that's also because of the fact that right now Clemson is – I would argue, I would say Clemson has regained their spot as the best team in the ACC this season. I think that game against Syracuse, I think they're going to expose Syracuse. I think Syracuse is a team that hasn't played Wake yet, hasn't played NC State yet, hasn't played Florida State yet, hasn't played Clemson yet. So I think Syracuse could easily end up with 3 losses before it's all said and done. So I think Clemson is right now the best team that the ACC has to offer. That's not saying that much because I still think they get beat in the college football playoff. So, yeah, I would say it's probably Miami, Florida, and it depends on what part of the state you're from. If you're from South Florida like me, you hate Florida a little bit more because you know more people who went to Miami, you grew up with more Miami fans like we did here in South Florida. If you're from the Tampa, Orlando area where it's a more of a Gator concentrated area, you probably hate Miami a little more because you grew up around more people who are Gator fans or people who went to the University of Florida. Clemson, I would say, is the second. It's the biggest Atlantic Division rival we have. I will give you that much. But as far as that, it is a distant third behind Miami and Florida.
Well, I think the big distinction here is, and I think you'll back me up on this, is that Florida State versus Miami, Florida State versus Florida, those games will never go away in regards to the importance because of the obvious in-state connection and rivalry, even on bad seasons. The whole Clemson dynamic of a series and that being important was created by both teams being good in the same division and owning that conference and battling for the conference title. It was just totally circumstantial based on the results and the performance on the field.
Well, let's not forget if you look back at the history of the series in the first 30 years that Florida State has been a member of the ACC, Clemson didn't win until the 12th meeting in the 2003 season. That was the first time. So Florida State won the first 11 games the teams played that Florida State was a member of the ACC. It went back and forth for a while. I think they won in 03, they won in 05 and 06 and 07. We won in 04, we won in 08. I think they won again in 09. We won in 10. I think they won in 11. Then we won 12, 13, 14, and then they've won since. So, and with the exception of, I think it's 17. I think we're 17 and 12 with them since joining the ACC. Obviously, because we didn't play in the 2020 season. But I think that's one of the things. I think right now Clemson has been put on that level because, like you said, Clemson is the national power, and it's also the fact that we haven't beat them. Yes, we've lost 3 in a row to NC State, but we beat them in 2019, so we at least have a more recent win against them. Boston College, we beat them this year. Louisville, we beat them this year. Wake Forest, we beat them for the last time in the 2019 season. No, excuse me, I apologize, 2018 season as well in that game. Syracuse, we beat Syracuse last year. Sorry, I just had to quick math in my head. Yeah, so we beat Syracuse last year, and I'm drawing a blank on who's our other team in the Boston College, Wake Forest, Clemson, Syracuse, NC State. Who's our other Atlantic Division team?
Wake, NC State, Syracuse, Boston College, Clemson, Florida State, Wake, Boston College, NC State, Syracuse,
Louisville.
Yeah,
so we covered that. So that's pretty much where we're at right now. So we've at least had some recent success. We have not beat Clemson since the 2014 season. So that's why it's kind of the anxiousness of us beating Clemson. If Wake Forest beats us 3 more times in a row, Wake Forest might become a bigger rival just because we need to beat them. And that's where the question comes into play. If we beat Clemson this year, does the rivalry kind of go down a little bit on that one? So that's where I think it comes into play. But as far as if you're saying, looking at Florida State's schedule of the teams we play every season, which would be the Atlantic Division, the 7 Atlantic Division teams, 6 Atlantic Division teams, Miami and Florida. So out of those 8 teams, Miami, Florida, Clemson down here.
Sure. For as much fun as we have on this show, with typically Logan here and James, where are they? I don't know. But anyway, they're not here. But for as much fun as we've had on the show now for 180 weeks, so we're looking at 3 years and 30 weeks. We're well over 3.5 years. For as much fun as we have on this show on a regular basis, one of my favorite conversations we've had, because I posted a video about this myself. I also saw an extensive article. I believe ESPN was borrowing it from another publication, and I brought it up, is the transition in power, kind of the demise of Florida State after the national championship and the ascension of Clemson, and watching that, living through that, being a football nerd, of course, going through that process, and then getting your take, Logan's take, James' take on how that transition worked from Clemson emerging under Dabo and beating teams like LSU and Ohio State in bowl games and really rising, but Florida State still keeping them down, 2012, 13, 14. And then Clemson ascending, finally breaking through in 15, but Florida State still being close, and then finally, of course, fading.
Well, first of all, let me just say real quick, since we're at the halfway point of the show, make sure, since I'll actually show up, since Logan can't show up to the show, make sure you hit the like button. If you don't hit the like button, a puppy dies, and we don't want any puppies to die as far as this show. So we love puppies here. Make sure if you hit the like button, a puppy lives. So keep the puppies alive. To answer your question, and I've said this before on the show, exactly, please hit the like button, keep the puppies alive. The reason for Clemson's success is because of Florida State. Florida State came in as the juggernaut in the ACC and started the 1992 season when the ACC was, let's just call it was a joke of a football conference. It was a basketball conference that just happened to play football during the fall. Florida State built the ACC into what is. Clemson is there because Clemson said, we need to go get coaches and players that compete with Florida State guys. Arguably, the running back, C.J. Spiller, in the 2006 season, was a guy from the state of Florida. They said, we need to come in, get more guys from the state of Florida. They brought in Tommy Bowden as the coach. Brad Scott, a former offensive coordinator at Florida State, after he got fired from South Carolina, came in and became their offensive coordinator at Clemson. They knew what they were doing. Also, I think people tend to forget, the 2013 season, Florida State was supposed to win the ACC. That was the year that Clemson was supposed to come in, win the ACC, and take over, and it was going to be a back and forth between Florida State and Clemson. The 2014 season, Florida State, remember, Jameis was suspended for that game. Florida State had to win it in overtime. So finally, the 2015 season and 2016 season, Clemson got those close wins, come from behind win in the 2016 season. And all of a sudden, Clemson it seemed like, all right, we overtook Florida State. We're finally over that ACC hump. Now we're the big dogs in the conference. So it's because of Florida State that Clemson is who they are at this moment. So now Florida State is looking at Clemson going, okay, and especially this season, we are much better this season than we have been. Sammy Watkins from Fort Myers, exactly. We are a much better team this season than we have been in the last 5 seasons. From 2017 through 2021, this is a much better Florida State team than we are seeing this season. So the question is, that's why I'm saying in this game right here, yes, they were bullies of the Special Olympics of the ACC. Who else was a good team in the ACC in the 80s and 90s? What, Virginia for half a season in 1990? Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech, yeah.
Georgia Tech, split one national title in 1990. What else did they do?
And they basically split a national title because they didn't play a legitimate schedule in a legitimate conference.
Clemson was a juggernaut team of a bad conference. That's all they were. But they were not on the level of what Florida State was when Florida State came in.
Was actually one of the better teams in the conference.
Yeah. But this is where Florida State's going to see. And that's why I'm going to say, do I think Florida State beats Clemson this week? No. I'll give you my prediction in a moment as far as score. I think Clemson wins the game, but this is where the question is going to be. Can Florida State compete with Clemson like they did last year and show that they really can be on the same level with the Tigers, or do they get blown out? And that's the question. So that's where Florida State's at right now. You've just lost 2 games where I could make a legitimate argument that NC State and Wake Forest did not beat Florida State. Florida State beat themselves in both those games. So now you're gunning with a Clemson team coming in as a top 5 ranked team in the country, but a team that has had their own question marks even this season. This is where Florida State is going. We're going to see what Florida State is. We're going to see where Florida State is for the rest of the season. Because you look at the last 5 games of our season, I would argue there's 3 winnable games right there. I think Florida State finishes the season at least 7-5 right now, barring an epic breakdown at this point. But it's all going to depend on this game. If Florida State comes out this game and loses 27-24, I have much greater confidence for the last 5 games of the season. If Florida State gets blown out, 59-10, which I don't think that will happen, but if they get blown out in this game, Florida State's going to be in trouble the last 5 games of the season.
I am so much looking forward to your answer for this question.
Oh, God.
Why don't you like Dabo Swinney?
I don't like Dabo in the same way that I had issues with Jimbo Fisher. I think Dabo Swinney is a very good football coach. I think Dabo Swinney is a good football coach for the environment of what the Clemson football program needed. That being said, I do not believe that Dabo truly believes in who he is, the Dabo that he is selling. I have equated him before to a used car salesman. What do I have to do to get you in this Toyota Camry? What do I have to say to get you to buy this Honda Civic right now? I think Dabo does what he can to get the best players into Clemson. I think he cares about his players while they're at Clemson, while they're doing the job for him. While they are winning football games for him, they care about him. But I think, first of all, I think he's gone from Clemson the second the Alabama job opens. I think he's the next head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. I do firmly believe that. I just don't like his smug attitude. I don't like his demeanor. I said the same thing about Jimbo, and I think Jimbo is being exposed that way now at Texas A&M. There's a lot of people starting to turn on him after seeing the way this season has played out and the way the offseason played out during his time at Texas A&M. He's just a very shady guy. I think shady is the best word for Dabo. I don't wish anything bad upon him. I don't think he's a horrible human being. I think there are other coaches that are much worse than him. I just think he's a very shady person.
All right. Not to focus the show on Dabo, because I could go on and on about this, because I would delve deeper into why you would think that, what he's done for you to get that vibe from him. Because I think he's one of the more authentic, genuine coaches in college football.
Something I've noticed, and I will say this, and I'm going to delve into my personal life for a moment. As somebody who's gone through AA for over 22 months now, there's a lot of people who, when they start to go into, whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, any of those organizations, the problem is when you have an addictive personality, you always have to be addicted to something. So in a lot of cases, people who go into Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, which I still attend meetings and still I've gone almost 23 months without a drink. A lot of them turn to religion and become an overly zealous religious person because that's the addiction. It's not because they are truly a religious person as who they are, but they become addicted to the religion. I always, and we've had our discussions on off screen about it before, people who are overly religious, as Dabo proclaims himself to be, and that's fine, I always tend to want to know what made that person that way. And I do believe there are people who are genuinely religious in that way, but there are some people, I believe, and in seeing it, who use religion for their own personal interest. That's where it comes into play with me. And I'm not just talking about Christianity. I'm talking about Judaism. I'm talking about Muslim. I'm saying with any religion. Anyone who uses religion towards their own advantage, I have an issue with.
I tend to think in this day and age of America that it actually is a detriment to most people's popularity to be too religious or spiritual in a certain way.
I would use an example of somebody like a Bobby Bowden. Bobby Bowden was spiritual till the day he died and was still loved and revered. I mean, I disagreed with him religiously. I disagreed with him politically. I still named a dog after him. So, I mean, but that's just Timothy. I'm a Jewish liberal Democrat who named a dog after a conservative Baptist Republican. So that's so I would say on that one. And maybe it's just because I don't know Dabo personally, and maybe I would think differently if Dabo was the coach at Florida State or something like that. But just seeing him from the outside and hearing some of his conversations, hearing you coming out against players getting money as far as NIL deals while you're making over $8 million a year as a head coach. That's kind of the stuff with me that I have a little bit of an issue with.
Well, you just stated something that's extremely important, that for example, I like Dabo Swinney based on what I've seen, based on what I hear out of him, but I would in no way vouch for the man. I don't know the man. If something horrible came out about Dabo Swinney tomorrow, I'd throw my hands up and say, I was not a supporter of Dabo Swinney because I don't know the man. I don't stand up for or vouch for anyone I don't personally know. But I'm just stating all of that based on what I see and what I know of him.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows what goes on in the personal lives and personal thoughts of individuals. So.
I mean, if I'm ranking the three coaches as far as who I hate the most, as far as between Billy Napier, Mario Cristobal, and Dabo Swinney, I'd probably rank it Billy Napier, just because if you're the coach of the University of Florida, you are the devil. Like, you just absolutely are the devil.
So it has nothing to do with him.
Oh, it's absolutely. The head coach of the University of Florida will always be the devil. Then I'd probably go Dabo Swinney just because I believe he's shady. And Mario because I know Mario. And I think Mario is a good guy, genuinely. He just has the one mistake of being a UM grad who happens to coach the University of Miami Hurricanes. And, I mean, they're sad right now. They're 2-3. It was sad.
They're having some serious issues.
They're like a dog that didn't hit the like button. That's what they are. So hit the like button.
Issues there.
If you don't hit the like button, we turn to the Miami Hurricanes, and we can't have that, guys.
Incredibly, as you pointed out a few minutes ago when running down the Atlantic Division, it is outside of Clemson. Clemson has posted the two most important wins in the division because obviously they took out the two, what I consider to be the two best other teams in the division back to back. So they have posted the two most important wins, except Syracuse is the one team sitting there. Now, granted, they haven't played anyone, and they get their first test coming up with NC State at home this weekend. So if Syracuse could somehow pull out a win against NC State just to make it interesting, just to make it that Clemson's not going to curb stomp everyone and just lay the division to waste. I would love to see Syracuse go play Clemson later this season at whatever point that game is as
Next
a
week.
team. Next week. Oh, so this is perfect. If they could somehow beat NC State, which I think they've got a fighting chance, although I think NC State's a better team. Syracuse wins that game. At least it sets up on paper a division showdown.
What's setting up right now for Florida State? If you're the Florida State Seminoles, you're playing for what could be a decent bowl berth at this point. There's a chance right now that Florida State could play anywhere from, if you look at the projections, I believe there's one that says Illinois in the Pinstripe Bowl. It's at Yankee Stadium. There's a projection I saw of playing UCLA in the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, which I would die to go to that game because I think San Diego is one of the most amazing places in this country.
Yep.
There's a chance, and it's like a beautiful mind with 20 different ways to get here. There is still a outside shot that Florida State could play in the Orange Bowl. Because what you have to remember, the Orange Bowl is tied to the ACC champion. If Clemson goes to the playoff, they are contractually obligated to take the highest ranked team left from the ACC. So if Syracuse folds, if NC State, if they lose another game, and Wake Forest loses another game, they have 2 losses. NC State has 2 losses. And let's say Florida State loses to Clemson this week, but wins their last 5 games and somehow goes 9-3 on the season. Let's just say in a perfect world that happens. They could catapult into the rankings enough to be the top team right there in the ACC at that point behind Clemson, and they would be able to go to the Orange Bowl. So there is an outside shot. Do I think that happens? Probably not. I think it's more of a Holiday Bowl or a Pinstripe Bowl, which at this rate, I would take that in an absolute heartbeat. But I think that's where the optimism comes into play, and that's what we need to see. If Florida State loses by 3 or 4 points against this Clemson team, I think Florida State can win their last 5 games. If Florida State gets blown out by 17 points or more, I think Florida State is in trouble because, like you said, you're playing a Georgia Tech team after the bye week where, I think we're a better team than Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech's also won their last 2 games right now at this rate. You're playing a Miami team that it's 2 out of its 3 games before Florida State are a Virginia Tech team with a losing record, a Virginia team with a losing record, and Duke. Duke is a better team than them right now, but I think there's a chance Miami could win all 3 of those games. You've got a Syracuse team who's unbeaten and a Florida team who somehow Florida is 4-2 and about to play an LSU team. Florida could be 5-2 right now by the end of this weekend. So it could be interesting at this point to see where Florida State is at this point in the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Georgia Tech has a new head coach after firing Jeff Collins, and he has worked wonders with 2 games that Georgia Tech had no chance conceivably of winning a month ago after losing 13 consecutive ACC games, losing, I think it was 10 consecutive FBS games. They've knocked off Pitt and Duke the last 2 weeks, and now Georgia Tech at 2-1 has a shot to win the division.
The defending ACC champion, Pitt Panthers.
Yes.
Your Pitt Panthers.
Crazy stuff here in the Coastal.
I still owe you $20 for that pick.
And we are what, Jason? We are just 1 season away from there being no division selection for the championship game, correct? Or are we 2 seasons away?
No, it's next season. But in a perfect world, we're 1 season away from being in the Big Ten. Let's just be honest about it.
Okay. Well, if you want to look at it that way, I'm going to stay with what we know right now.
Big Ten, please, Big Ten. I can wait till 2024. Give me 1 more. That's fine. Just take us, please.
But so all that mess in the Coastal Division, all those mediocre teams, they need to take advantage this year because that gift to a title game slot will be taken away next season.
Who would you say right now? I'm going to ask you. I'm going to put you on the spot, MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who has been the surprise team in the ACC this year through the halfway point of the season, and who has been the biggest disappointment in the ACC through the first half of the season?
I think it's pretty easy. I'm going with Syracuse as the surprise team, even though, again, backloaded schedule, we're going to really find out who they are starting this Saturday. But they have beaten a pretty good Purdue team and then won a bunch of other games against the likes of Virginia and Louisville, but they won their games. They're 5-0. So to me, it's Syracuse. Although, man, with what's happened the last few weeks with Georgia Tech, I think that's a shocking development.
Mm-hmm.
On the downside, I think Miami in a landslide is the disappointment.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to do that mostly to take another shot at Miami. And now I got Mark taking shots at Miami. So it's beautiful. This is how we work here. But yeah, as far as disappointment, I think, and Miami fans are sitting there getting way too confident because they only lost North Carolina by 3. Now you go to a Virginia Tech team that could honestly, I think Miami is a better team than Virginia Tech, but Virginia Tech at home could beat Miami. That's what I will say about Miami. Miami is a team right now that could win 6 of their last 7 games. I think Clemson curb stomps them no matter what. But they're also a team that could end up finishing 4-8. That's what we don't know about this Miami team right now. As far as my surprise team, I'm going to throw out an interesting one to you. And it's interesting because they're a team that lost Georgia Tech last week. But Duke. Duke is a team that Duke was, over the last couple seasons, I could argue pathetic in the ACC. And they were undefeated for a while. They lose to Kansas, lose to Georgia Tech. But they're a team that could come down here and beat Miami in 2 weeks or in a week and a half. They're a team that could, they played North Carolina this week. They could beat North Carolina. They're a team that could make it interesting in the Coastal. I thought Mark froze for a second.
I thought you froze for a second.
I never freeze, baby. I'm in South Florida. It's 900 degrees on October 12th. I never freeze.
I was just about to jump on that and think, okay, I'm taking over here because Jason has left us.
I will not be a program alert for your viewers who want to watch. Next week, I will not be here because it's the Panthers home opener as Mark's Florida Panthers take on the Philadelphia Flyers. Mark, we all know, is a huge fan of both hockey and South Florida and the Florida Panthers.
All of that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Only superseded by my love of soccer.
Did either of your kids ever play soccer?
I wouldn't call it playing soccer. It was like the first sport that they were introduced to in some fashion and kind of went out park and rec, 5 years old, running around, didn't know what was going on. And that was it, 1 year. And then they were baseball kids from there on out.
That's why. See, you didn't like being a soccer dad. I could see it. You didn't like the chocolate milk and the orange slices.
Baseball. Baseball.
Mark,
Baseball and softball.
Mark, do you want my pick?
Yes, we want to hear your pick on the big game. And let's keep in mind, everyone, that you get all of Jason's picks, at least on our 12-pack for the media, our media contributors here at the Voice of College Football. Over on Patreon, search MarkRogersTV. You get the Discord link. You can talk college football 24/7, 365, and you get all my picks. But again, Jason's picks as well.
So last week I left early before being able to say I thought NC State would beat us 28-24. So I'm going to consider that one a win. I'm going to say I'm 5-1 on the season as far as my picks.
Okay.
I will be in Tallahassee rooting for Florida State. I will be cheering on the Seminoles this Saturday when they take on Clemson. I'm also driving up from Broward County knowing full well that I believe Florida State will lose the game. I've come to terms with that. I've accepted this fact. I will still cheer. I pray to God that I'm wrong. But I think Clemson is still right now the class of the ACC, and I think they are the best team, and I think they come in and get the win. I think Florida State makes it a lot closer than it has been over the past couple seasons against them. And I think Florida State makes the last 5 games of the season really interesting as far as what the future could hold. So I'm going to say Clemson 31, Florida State 27. And now I'm going to say another sentence to allow Mark to type in those scores so they can put that super up on the screen. Look at that right there. Timing is everything.
That would be an impressive showing by the Seminoles at home against the top 5 team in the country, but certainly a disappointing loss, excruciating looking loss by the metrics there, 31-27. So the disappointment of losing a game that could have been won, but also for those people that look big picture, hey, we hung with the class of the ACC. And this is obviously the culmination of the 3-game stretch in which we've been talking about for quite some time. NC State, Wake, and Clemson, not in that order, but the 3 big dogs in the division, and Florida State looking to pull one out, one that they should have taken care of last week. in Raleigh-Durham.
And if they can be competitive against an NC State team that was top 15, a Clemson team that was top 5, and you're talking about losing by 2 points to NC State in a game that I was more disappointed with that one because you had a 14-point lead at the half. And if you can keep it under 5 points against the top 5 team, the sky's the limit for the last 5 games of the regular season.
All right, folks, and our Clemson folks over on the Clemson channel, keep in mind that you can join us for Florida State talk, and I know that makes some of you sick, but think of it this way. Some great college football talk every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time over on the Florida State channel, so join us there and bring a friend.
Come learn something. Come learn something.
Absolutely. Jason, thanks for making this happen as always.
I'm going to do this again in 2 weeks. I promise.
Enjoy your week off.
I will be back for Georgia Tech preview.
We will miss you. And have a great weekend.
I'll get you your Panthers jersey that you've always wanted.
Absolutely. Folks, we'll see you in a few minutes on the Miami channel.
Oh, sorry.
On the Miami channel, everyone. Right now, get on over there.